Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. Today is day 54 in our 90-day SAT prep series. Today is going to be solely the writing and language section. So what we're going to be doing today is you're going to be taking SAT practice test 3, the writing and language test from that practice test. So you're going to take that, you're going to do that in 35 minutes. Just take it like you would if it was on the real SAT, so try to simulate realistic test conditions. So take that in 35 minutes, try to use the pacing that I outlined in day, I believe it was day 50. Try to use that pacing, so that means that you're going to try to finish with about 10 to 5 minutes left. So you want to finish in about 25 minutes or 30 minutes, and then use that last 10 or 5 minutes or however long you have left, then to go back through, make sure everything on your answer sheet matches your test booklet, and check any answer choices that you were unsure of or any questions that you weren't quite sure of your answer on. So use that last sort of 10 minutes or so to kind of check your work. So try to make sure you're doing that pacing. Also try to follow those sort of guidelines that I kind of laid out in day 50's video of sort of if you see a 1 in front of a sentence, then go ahead and find that sentence you have to place, come up with what should come before it, what should come after it, and then place it as you read through that paragraph and answer questions that come up through that paragraph as well. That way you don't have to reread that whole paragraph again to place a sentence. Also, if you're asked to add or delete a sentence or decide whether it should be kept or deleted and you need more context, then as you read down to get that context, make sure you're answering those questions as you read them. That way you don't have to reread. So those are really the two big things there. So hopefully that'll help you. So try to keep those kind of ideas, those concepts, those sort of procedures in mind as you take this. And with that, what's going to happen here in about 20 seconds is I'm going to pop up a timer on your screen, or it won't be a timer, but it'll just kind of say your 35 minutes has started. And then once that 35 minutes is up, I'll let you know that your 35 minutes is up. And then at that point, what will happen is you'll see me then do a walkthrough in about 25 minutes for the SAT practice test 3. So I'll kind of complete that in right around 25 minutes. And I'm not going to waste your time doing that sort of 10 to 5 minutes where I check my work, because I know that I'll be right. So this video will be just probably a little bit over an hour. But yes, that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. So then as you'll be able to check your work then when you see me go through it. You'll be able to see what you got right, what you got wrong. You'll also be able to see then things that I did to be more efficient possibly, because there are some ways to find the correct answer that are faster than others. So try to pay attention to that as well. And with that, you're going to go ahead and get started in 3, 2, 1. All right, your time is up for the writing and language section of SAT Practice Test 3. At this time, I will begin the video of me going through SAT Practice Test 3, timed in about 25 minutes or so, to kind of give you an idea of how you can go through it. With that pacing, I won't be spending that last 10 minutes checking my work because I know that I'll end up being right, so I'm not going to waste your time there. Also, I'm going to try and keep this video as close to an hour as I can. I don't want it to go too far over. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with that breakdown of the correct answers to SAT Practice Test 3 and how I would pace through it. 3. Alright, so here's going to be me pacing through the writing and language section of the SAT in about 25 minutes to give you an idea of how you can kind of finish with around 10 minutes left to check your work. So we got questions 1 through 11 are based on the following passage. Shed some light on the workplace. Studies have shown that employees are happier, healthier, and more productive when they work in an environment. Okay, right here I know that this is basically a parallelism question, asking to make sure that I'm maintaining this IER at the end of my words. Now I can't say productive ear because that's not a word obviously, so I do have to say and more productive. So I know my correct answer there would be A, right? We don't want to say comma and they are because then we're repeating they and we don't need to repeat it. We also don't want to say being. We would also have to have an and after healthier anyways, so that's wrong. And then as far as answer choice B versus answer choice A, it looks like the only difference there would be healthy versus healthier. Obviously, we want to say healthier since we said happier here, and we want to maintain that parallelism. So our answer for number 1 then is going to be A. All right, so now we got question 2. When they work in an environment in which temperatures are carefully controlled, we're asked for the most appropriate introduction to the passage. I see up in my title I'm talking about shedding a light on the workplace, but I want to read on it some more to kind of see what the main idea of this passage will be before I answer number 2. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have new buildings may be designed with these studies in mind, but many older buildings were not, resulting in spaces that often depend primarily on artificial lighting. While employers may balk at the expense of reconfiguring such buildings to increase the amount of natural light, the investment has been shown to be well worth it in the long run for both employers and employees. Okay, so I'm talking about artificial lighting versus natural light, things like that. So I don't want to talk about temperatures, so A is wrong. B, that affords them adequate amounts of natural light. Yes, we want to talk about that natural light, so B would be our correct answer for 2. All right, so that's A and then B, and then as far as why C and D are wrong, that is thoroughly sealed to prevent energy loss. We're not talking about that. In which they feel comfortable asking for special accommodations, also not talking about that. All right, so now we move on. We got question 3. For one thing, a lack of exposure to natural light has a significant impact on employees' health. A study conducted in 2013 by Northwestern University in Chicago showed that inadequate natural light could result in eye strain, headaches, and fatigue, as well as interference with the body's circadian rhythms. Circadian rhythms, which are controlled by the body's biological clocks. Okay, the bodies that does possess those biological clocks, so we do need to have that apostrophe there. It looks like at this point the writers, hang on, oh, looks like I skipped one on a minute. Okay, let me just quick go answer this one. I accidentally skipped 3. So we have body's biological clocks. Obviously, like I said, we're talking about clocks. Clocks doesn't own anything. Okay, so clocks can't have that apostrophe at the end, so we can go ahead and get rid of those two. So now it's between bodies in A versus C. We know that bodies in A, we have to have it owning something, right? It has to have that apostrophe, so we know our answer has to be C then. Clocks doesn't own anything, but the bodies do own those biological clocks. So our answer for 4 has to be C. Okay, let's go back and answer 3. Should the writer include workers in offices with windows sleep an average of 46 minutes more per night than workers in offices without windows? Okay, well, we shouldn't add this because we're talking about the body's circadian rhythms. And if we include that right there, right, this sentence right here that I'm circling that we're asked if we should add, if we include that, we're going to disrupt our discussion of these circadian rhythms, right? We want to keep those two sentences together, those two discussions of circadian rhythms together, so we don't want to interrupt them. Okay, so our answer would be C, no, because it interrupts the discussion of circadian rhythms. All right, so now we can go and move on. We answered 4 already, so now we got question 5. Employees who feel less than 100% and are sleep deprived are less prone to work at their maximal productivity. One company in California gained a huge boost in its employees' morale when it moved from an artificially lit distribution facility to one with more natural illumination. We're asked for, let's see. Man, it looks like we skipped 5 on accident as well, so I'll have to go back and answer that one. Okay, which choice best supports the statement made in the previous sentence? Well, the best support here, in the previous sentence, we're talking about productivity. So we want to show something that employees who are employers that are now having natural light rather than artificial light see a boost in productivity. So our correct answer there would be B, so a 5% boost in productivity. All right, so let's go back and answer 5 real quick. I accidentally skipped over that one. We have, like any other health problems, these A elements can turn into increased employee absenteeism, which in turn is costly for employers. Okay, so the word is needs to match a number with employee absenteeism, which we would say is singular. Okay, is singular, so that matches our subject singular, verb singular. So 5, our answer there should be A, no change. All right, so now we got question 7. So in context, which best combines the underlined sentences? So we have artificial light sources are also costly aside from lowering worker productivity. They typically constitute anywhere from 25 to 30% of a building's energy use. Okay, well, what we want to do here is we do want to make sure that we're also transitioning from our previous paragraph to our new one. So I do want to just quick take a look at that. I see that we're talking about natural illumination is what we ended ours with. Our last paragraph with. We have in context which best combines these underlined sentences. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to start with the shortest one and then go to our largest. So we have a 1 here, a 2 here, a 3 here, and a 4 here. So we have option C, typically constituting 25 to 50% of a building's energy use. Artificial light sources lower worker productivity and are costly. Okay, no, because we want to include that lowering of worker productivity that we talked about in that previous paragraph up top, right? The lowering of worker productivity. We want to start with that to connect our previous paragraph to our new one. So lowering worker productivity, we want to connect that. So we want to start with that. Okay, so I want to find an answer that starts with lowering worker productivity. I see C does not. D says artificial lights. Okay, we don't want to start with that. Option A, aside from lowering worker productivity. Okay, that's a good transition from my previous paragraph to my current one. Artificial lights are costly, typically constituting anywhere from 25 to 50% of businesses' energy use. Yes, okay, that uses a well-placed modifier, right? It's modifying these artificial light sources, so that works. Grammatically correct. Nothing is inefficient, nothing is repetitive or redundant. A is our correct answer. All right, next up, we've got when a plant in Seattle, Washington was redesigned for more natural light, the company was able to enjoy annual electricity cost reductions of $5,000. Okay, we don't want to say each year because we already said annual, and that means the same thing. So we can go ahead and delete that underlined portion. So our answer there would be D. All right, so now we got question 9. So let's go and go down to question 9. We have among the possibilities to reconfigure a building's lighting is the installation of full pane windows to allow the greatest degree of sunlight to reach the office interiors. Okay, so we have businesses can install light tubes. Keep in mind I skip over this because I want to find out what my sentence is saying first. So businesses can install light tubes. Okay, that should be which are, not these are, should be comma, which are pipes placed in workplaces to capture and funnel sunlight down into a building's interior. Okay, so correct answer there should be C for number 10. Now as far as our transition from our previous sentence to our current sentence, we're talking about an alternative to those full pane windows is these tubes or these pipes. So that's an alternative to that. So our answer there would be C. So we have 9C, we got 10C. All right, so now we got question 11. Glass walls and dividers can also be used to replace solid walls as a means of distributing. Okay, that's an idiom question. We would say a means of, not a means from, not a means through, and we can't delete it either. Our answer for 11 would be B. All right, now we got our second passage. Let's go ahead and go down to our second passage. We're going to have to pick up the pace a little bit. So we have transforming the American West through food and hospitality. Just as travelers taking road trips today may need to take a break for food or rest at a long highway, settlers traversing the American West by train in the mid-1800s often found themselves in need of refreshment. Okay, that's perfect. We don't need to say oneself or himself because we have multiple people, and we don't say their selves. We would say themselves. Correct answer there is A. All right, so now we got question 13. So we have, however, food available on rail lines was generally of terrible quality. Now we're told for what's providing the most logical introduction to the sentence. So we have Fred Harvey, an English-born entrepreneur. Okay, that's not essential. We want to have a comma there. And then we should get rid of that. So it just says Fred Harvey and then decided to open his own restaurant. So we want to get rid of he. Okay, so we get rid of that. We can't use a colon there. We need to use that comma to complete that non-essential phrase or clause. So our answer would be D for number 14. Decided to open his own restaurant business to serve rail customers. Okay. Now that's to capitalize on the demand for great food. It's not because he lived in New York or New Orleans or because he worked for railroad companies, and we can't delete it either. We need to have an intro to that sentence. Correct intro there would be C, to capitalize on the demand for great food. Okay, so we have beginning in the 1870s, he opened dozens of restaurants and rail stations and rail cars. These Harvey houses, which constitute the first restaurant chain in the United States, were unique. Okay, we know it has to be were unique because were is plural and Harvey houses is plural. So our answer there is going to have to be were unique for there. Okay, we have to maintain that plural. So our answer there would be B for number 15. All right, now we got question 16. The menu was modeled after those of fine restaurants, so the food was leagues beyond the sinister fare. Well, we wouldn't call it the sinister fare, okay, because sinister would imply something like evil. We wouldn't say the icky fare because that's too casual. So we'd have it between surly and abysmal. Now we wouldn't characterize food as surly, but we would characterize food that tastes badly as abysmal. So our correct answer for 16 would be C. All right, so now we've got question 17. His restaurants were immediately successful, but Harvey was not content to follow conventional business practices. At this point, the writer is considering deleting the previous sentence. Should the writer make this change? Well, let's see if our sentence that we just said talks anything or has anything to do with what we talk about in this paragraph. So we have, although women did not traditionally work in restaurants in the 19th century, Harvey decided to try employing women as waitstaff. In 1883, he placed an advertisement seeking educated, well-mannered, articulate women between the ages of 18 and 30. Okay, so one thing that I noticed right off the bat is that we don't want to delete it because him not taking these conventional business practices is introducing the fact that even though women didn't traditionally work in restaurants, Harvey did employ them as waitstaff. Okay, so that's introducing that idea. That's showing that he's not content to follow those conventional business practices, so it's providing a logical introduction to the paragraph. Therefore, we do not want to delete it. Okay, the writer should not make this change. The writer should not delete it. It should be kept. So our answer for 17 there should be C. Okay. We have response to the advertisement was overwhelming, even tremendous. Overwhelming and tremendous basically mean the same thing. I don't want to say both of them. Therefore, my answer is going to have to be answer choice B for number 18. All right, number 18, we got B. Now we're on number 19. So we got Harvey soon replaced the male service at his restaurant with with women. Those who were hired as Harvey girls joined an elite group of workers who were expected to complete 30-day training program, follow a strict code of rules and conduct and curfews. In the workplace, women donned identical black and white uniforms and carried out their duties with precision. Not only were such regulations meant to ensure the efficiency of the business and the safety of the workers, but also, okay, we do want to do but also, okay, because we said not only, we would say not only this, but also that. So we want to make sure we have but also. So we can go ahead and get rid of C, we can get rid of D. So we have but also helped or but also helping. Okay, well, we have these regulations were meant to ensure the efficiency of the business and the safety of the workers. So we're looking for, okay, I see I have donned here. I was looking for another verb to help find my tense here. Since I have donned there, I'm going to want to have helped right here. So our answer for, or hang on a minute, hang on. Let me just run through something. I got to check something really quick. So I want to make sure that I'm being grammatically correct as well for number 19. So one thing I need to watch out for is I see I have a comma in the word but here. So I want to make sure that I have to have an independent clause following the word but in order to connect those two with a comma and a fanboy, because it has to be two independent clauses. Now if I say but also helping or but also helped, there's no subject there. And since I have to have a subject, my answer has to be D, because I have to have but they also helped to raise people's generally low opinion of the restaurant industry. So correct answer for 19 actually has to be D, because I need to have a subject for that second independent clause. So I missed that at first, but I did catch that as I started reading through, because I noticed that I had that comma paired with that but, which meant I have to have a subject there, and I didn't have a subject there in options A through C, therefore D had to be my correct answer for 19. So you got to watch out for that. All right, so now we've got, in return for the server's work, the position paid quite well for the time, $17.50 a month, plus tips, meals, room and board, laundry service, and travel expenses. For as long as Harvey houses served rail travelers throughout the mid-20th century, working there was a steady and lucrative position for women. Living independently and demonstrating an intense work ethic, comma, that's a dependent introductory clause. And then we have the Harvey girls right there, so that would be what we're looking for after ethic. It should just be a comma, so our answer for 21 should be D. Question 20, where's that at? Okay, it's right here. So which choice most logically follows the previous sentence? Okay, well, we just talked about how women were paid well for the time. Now we have the growth of Harvey's business coincided with the expansion of the Santa Fe Railroad, which served large sections of the American West. Nope, that's not what we want to talk about. Harvey would end up opening dozens of hotels and restaurants over his lucrative career. No, because we're talking about the Harvey girls there. The benefits enabled the Harvey girls to save money and build new and exciting lives for themselves in the so-called Wild West. Yes, that's a great answer. We're continuing our discussion of the Harvey girls because we don't want to be talking about Harvey's business at this point. And then we look at option D. It says the compensation was considered excellent at the time, though it may not seem much like today's standards. We already said that, so that would be repetitive and redundant to say it again. All right, Harvey girls became known as a transformative force in the American West. Okay, at this point, the writer is considering revising the underlined portion to read inspiring books, documentaries, and even a musical. Should we make this addition here? Yes, we should, because it's providing examples of their influence. So it's supporting that claim. So 22, our answer there would be A. All right, let me just make sure that we answered all of them for our first two passages, and then we'll go ahead and move on to our next two passages. Looks like we've got all of our questions answered up here. So now we are good to go ahead and move on to our next two passages. Keep in mind, we're going to have to pick up the pace a little bit right here. So we have, how do you like those apples? Marketed as Smart Fresh, the chemical 1-MCP has been used by fruit growers since 2002 in the United States and elsewhere to preserve the crispiness and lengthen the storage life of apples and other fruit, which often must travel long distances before being eaten by consumers. Okay, at this point, I'm probably going to be asked to combine these sentences. I am. Okay, so I have 1-MCP lengthens the storage life by 3 to 4 times when applied to apples. This extended life allows producers to sell their apples in the off-season months after the apples have been harvested. Okay, I'm really going to make sure I want to keep that logical order of events here because there's so many different events occurring. Okay, so I'm going to look at my options. I'm always going to start with my shortest one first. I see my shortest one is going to be between A and C and D, so it doesn't really matter where I start there. It can just be 1, 2, 3. It doesn't really matter, but B would be my fourth one. So now I'm just going to run through 23. I'll just go ahead and start with one down here. So what I want to start with is I want to start with talking about 1-MCP being applied to apples because that's what occurs first. So I don't want to start with it lengthening storage life, so I know that that's wrong. D, months after apples have been harvested, that's one of the last things that happens. Option A, when applied to apples, 1-MCP lengthens storage life by 3 to 4 times. That's the first thing that should happen. Allowing producers to sell their apples in the off-season, that's the second thing that would happen. Months after the apples have been harvested. Yes, that all follows a sequential order. My answer there would be A. There's nothing grammatically wrong and it follows a logical order. All right, now I got question 24. At a high cost of about 1 cent per pound of apples, 1-MCP is a highly cost-effective treatment. I accidentally said high cost. It was just a cost there. However, 1-MCP is not a panacea for fruit producers or sellers. There are problems and limitations associated with its use. Okay, I have a 1 there, so I'm going to go ahead and find the sentence I have to place. I got sentence 4. I got to place that one. Let me go find it. It says, but some fruits do not respond as well to 1-MCP as others do. Okay, that one I have to match do there. So I can go ahead and answer that. So that's going to be answer choice B for 28. And some even respond adversely. So I want to talk about adverse responses coming after sentence 4. And then I want to talk about fruits that do respond well before it. Okay, so I have 1-MCP works by limiting a fruit's production of ethylene. Ethylene, I want to just say a chemical because it's describing ethylene, so I want to get rid of the word it is, delete the underlined portion for 24, so that's D. Well, 1-MCP keeps apples tight and crisp. Okay, well, we wouldn't describe an apple as being tight, but we would describe an apple as being firm. We wouldn't describe it as stiff or taut, so our answer for 25 would be B. All right, and crisp for months, it also limits their scent production. Okay, in this case, apples is plural. Since apples is plural, we need to have a plural possessive pronoun because it does own the scent. So our correct answer for 26 would be A, no change. That's correct because it matches in number and it's also possessive. Okay, next up we got, this may not be much of a problem with certain kinds of apples that are not naturally very fragrant, such as Granny Smith, but for apples that are prized for their fruity fragrance, such as Macintosh, this can be a problem with consumers, these consumers who will reject the apples. So our correct answer for 27 is going to be who, so that's answer choice D. Okay, at this point I want to keep in mind that I'm talking about fruits that do respond adversely, right? I wanted to talk about an adverse response. Okay, an adverse response is the limiting of scent production. So let me just go down and see which sentences it gives me as options. I see I have options after 1, 2, and after 5 for question 30. Well, if we go back, we know that we want to have a discussion of adverse effects coming after sentence 4. Okay, we see our discussion of adverse effects as far as scent production, right? Scent production in Macintosh being a problem with consumers. That's an adverse effect, right? There's a problem with consumers and that lack of the expected aroma. So that's an adverse effect. So we're going to want to place this then. We're going to want to place it after, I believe it was, what are our options here? We got A, B, C, and D. Okay, we're going to want to place this one. We want to talk about the adverse production. We know that it's a problem with consumers, so that's adverse there, but we also know that the adverse effect stems from a limitation of their scent production. Okay, so since their scent production is being limited, that's an adverse effect, and that's the start of our discussion of adverse effects. So we want to place sentence 4 at the start. All right, we want the start of the adverse effects to come after sentence 4, so we want to place sentence 4 before sentence 2. So we want to place it before sentence 2, which we see is after sentence 1. So our answer there would be B for number 30. All right, so now let's go ahead and go up. We've already answered all of those, so now we're on question 29. Okay, so we have, take Bartlett pears, for instance, unless they are treated with exactly the right amount of 1-MCP. All right, so right there, what I'm seeing is I have take Bartlett pears, okay, and then I have for instance. That's an independent clause. Okay, so it's an independent clause. Now I have to connect that to my next clause. Okay, my next thing says, unless they are treated with exactly the right amount of 1-MCP at exactly the right time, they will remain hard and green until they rot, and consumers who experience this will be less likely to purchase them again. Okay, that's another independent clause. So I got to connect two independent clauses. Can't use a comma. I don't want to use a period here because my second independent clause is illustrating my first, and whenever my second independent clause illustrates the idea of my first, I want to connect them with a colon, so my correct answer for 29 is B. All right, I already answered 30. So now I'm down here. Finally, researchers have found that 1-MCP actually increases susceptibility to some pathologies in certain apple varieties. For example, Empire apples are prone to a condition that causes the flesh of the apple to turn brown. Traditionally, apple producers have dealt with this problem by leaving the apples in the open air for 3 weeks before storing them in a controlled atmosphere with tightly regulated temperature, humidity, and carbon dioxide levels. As the graph shows, the flesh of untreated Empire apples that are first stored in the open air undergoes. Okay, and then I'm guessing we have to find an accurate choice. I see that we do. Okay, so we're comparing the flesh of untreated Empire apples that are first stored in open air, to those that are immediately put in storage. Okay, so let's just go down. We'll take a look there. Now we see that we've got apples placed. Was it untreated? Let me just quick go up and check. Okay, we got accurate interpretation. Flesh of untreated Empire apples that are first stored in open versus the flesh of untreated that are immediately put. So we're looking at untreated, which is our gray line. We see that there's a drastic difference in those placed immediately in controlled versus those that are placed in controlled after 3 weeks in open air. So a large difference there. Okay, so it's not going to be slightly more, it's not going to be twice as much, it's going to be substantially less browning. It's not 5%, it's substantially less. So our answer there is going to be D for 31. All right, 32, which choice is accurate according to the data in the table? However, when Empire apples are treated with 1-MCP, so let's go take a look at when they're treated with 1-MCP, we see that that difference is very, very small. Okay, so that's the difference between those darker gray boxes. It's very, very small. So we have option A, their flesh turns brown when the apples are first stored, though not in under conditions. Option B, roughly half of their flesh turns brown regardless of whether they're first stored in open air. Yes, that's correct, right? It's roughly half for both of those, about the same. So our correct answer for 32 would be B. All right, so now we got our last passage. We have more than one way to dress a cat, from Michelangelo's David to Vincent van Gogh's series of self-portraits to Grant Wood's iconic image of a farming couple in American Gothic. Okay, that should be a comma because that's a dependent clause right there. So this is for 34. Did we answer 33? Let me just go up. Okay, we did not answer 33. We have to quick answer this one. The writer wants a conclusion that conveys how the shortcomings of 1-MCP presented in the passage affect the actions of people in the fruit industry. Which choice best accomplishes this goal? We have the problem maybe that consumers are overly concerned with superficial qualities rather than the actual freshness of the fruit. No, we want to talk about people in the fruit industry. B, many of the improvements in fruit quality they have discovered so far have required trade-offs in other properties of the fruit. No, we want to talk about the actions of people in the fruit industry. C, for many fruit sellers, they must weigh the relative values of aroma, color, and freshness when deciding whether or not to use 1-MCP. Yes, that's correct. That's talking about their actions. They have to weigh the pros and cons. So our answer would be C for 33. Okay, 34. Okay, I talked about how I want to have a comma after that introductory dependent clause there. So since I want to have that comma, I see my only answer there is going to be D. All right, now I got question 35. So we have the image of dogs playing poker, popularized in a series of paintings by American artist C.M. Coolidge. I'm going to have another M dash there to set off that non-essential phrase or clause. Okay, and you're noticing now that since I'm kind of closing in on my time, I'm kind of skipping a little bit, right? You can do that if you're starting to run out of time. You can skip around a little bit, and it shouldn't really hurt you. So 35, answer there is going to be B because we have to get that non-essential phrase or clause offset with those dashes. Okay, we've got some of the earliest drawings, works of art, including paintings and drawings tens of thousands of years old, found on cave walls in Spain and France, portray animals, right? So how do we know that? Well, we have works, okay, because we're going to get rid of our non-essential phrase or clause. We're not going to consider that. Then we're going to get rid of our prepositional phrase. We see our subject is works, that's plural. We need a plural verb, portray. Our answer there is going to be C. Okay, now we got 37. The writer wants to link the first paragraph with ideas that follow. Which choice best accomplishes this goal? So we have nor has an artistic homage to our fellow creatures entirely died out in the millennia since. And then it says link to the first paragraph, ideas that follow. We need to know the ideas that follow then. Okay, so the ideas that follow, we need to know those. So we have a 1 there. We're asked where to place sentence 5. Sentence 5 says continuing the tradition, so I want to talk about tradition before sentence 5. Peter's daughter is Elizaveta introduced the best and strongest cats in Russia to the Hermitage. So possibly a discussion of the Hermitage after as well. So we have the State Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, one of Russia's greatest art museums, has a long productive partnership with a much-loved animal, the cat. For centuries, cats have guarded this famous museum, ridding it of mice, rats, and other rodents that could damage the art, not to mention scare off visitors. That's a tense question. We want to make sure that we're maintaining tense, which is going to be answer choice C for number 38. Peter the Great introduced the first cat to the Hermitage in the early 18th century. Later, Catherine the Great declared the cats to be official guardians of the galleries. All right, well, what we see here is we talk about Peter the Great introducing the first cat. Okay, the next cats that get introduced the next cats that get introduced come from Peter's daughter Elizaveta. So we're going to want to place this after sentence 3. So 39, our correct answer there should be C. We want to keep that discussion of introducing those cats. Peter the Great did it first. After him was his daughter Elizaveta. So we want that after sentence 3. Okay, so now we can go back up. Let's just quick answer 37. Okay, which choice best accomplishes this goal of introducing those ideas that follow with that first paragraph? So we have, nor has artistic homage to our fellow creatures entirely died out in the millennia since, despite the many years that have passed since then and now. That's just the same thing as saying in the millennia since. So A is going to be wrong for 37. B, with special attention being paid to domestic animals such as cats. No, we want to talk about that museum in Russia because that's what we go on to talk about. We see that that's answer choice D, the example of a museum in Russia. Okay, because we talk about the Hermitage Museum, so we want to introduce that. So that's going to be D for 37. Okay, so now we've got a couple questions left. These cats are so cherished by the museum that officials recently decreed original paintings to be made of 6 of them. Well, we're not going to decree the paintings to be made, but we are going to commission them. Okay, that right there is just understanding the definition of words. Okay, commissioned is what we would say there because that's the correct definition of it, right? They would commission paintings to be made. In each, a cat is depicted upright in a human-like pose and clothed in imperial Russian attire. The person chosen for this task, digital artist Eldar Zakharinov. We don't want to have a comma there because that's all going to be one phrase. So we can go ahead and get rid of A, we can go ahead and get rid of B. Now the person chosen for this task, that's introducing that digital artist Eldar Zakharinov, okay, that does have to have a comma there. Okay, so there does have to be a comma there, so we see we're left with answer choice D for number 41. Now we have painted the cats in the style traditionally used by portraits. In so doing, we are presenting the cats as noble individuals worthy of respect. We're asked for what sets up the examples that follow, so we need to read on. One portrait, the Hermitage Court Chamber Herald cat, includes an aristocratic tilt of feline ears as well as a stately sweep of tail emerging from stiff scarlet and gold of royal court dress. The wise, thoughtful green eyes of the subject of the Hermitage Court outrunner cat mimic those of a trusted royal advisor. Okay, at this point, the writer is considering adding the museum occupies 6 historic buildings, including the Winter Palace, a former residence of Russian emperors. Should the writer make this addition here? Answer is no, because it's going to be pretty unrelated, right? It's kind of irrelevant to the paragraph, so our answer there would be D for number 43. Okay, what else do we got? Did we answer 42? No, we haven't. So which choice is setting up the examples that follow? We got to read on some more. Some may find it peculiar to observe cats portrayed in formal court poses, but these felines, okay, now we're asked, so it looks like we just have to conclude it on our own, but these felines, by mastering the art of killing mice and rats, are benefactors of the museum as important as any human. No, we're talking about them protecting the artwork. Okay, so protecting the artwork, we see that that's going to be answer choice D, protecting the museum's priceless artwork. Okay, that's why they're important to the museum, is because they protect the artwork. All right, so now let's go back. Let's quick answer 42. So we got which choice sets up the examples that follows. So we're talking about what he's doing by painting these cats, right? We talk about how they look like they are nobles. They have stately sweeps. They have a gold of royal court dress, stiff scarlet. So we're talking about how he's kind of dressing them as mimicking a trusted royal advisor. So really noble qualities of the cat. He's dressing them as nobility. So our correct answer there would be A for number 42, presenting the cats as noble individuals worthy of respect. All right, so at that point, it looks like we've answered all of them. I'll just quick double check and make sure. So it looks like that took me right around 27 minutes. I can't see the exact time because I didn't check what time I started exactly, but it looks like it took me about 27 minutes, which would leave me with 8 minutes to check my work, which is, that's in the range. Like I said in my day 50 video talking about pacing the SAT writing and language section, we typically want to have anywhere from 10 to 5 minutes left to check our work at the end and to check our answer sheet, which in this case, it looks like I do have about that amount of time. So overall, did I complete it in 25 minutes? No, it took a little bit longer. Is that perfectly fine? Yes, right? I'm still in that healthy range of having 5 to 10 minutes left to check my work at the end. So overall, I would say, could I probably have gone a little bit faster? Yes, but I'm still in that healthy range. So overall, I would say it's not too bad. Another thing to keep in mind is I'm also explaining things verbally as I'm doing this, which is obviously slowing me down a little bit. If I were taking this paper pencil, I don't have to explain things out as far as why the correct answer is correct. So that would obviously allow me to go faster. So in all reality, if I was taking this by myself without having to give these verbal explanations, obviously I'd probably be getting it done in significantly less than that 25 minutes. But that's neither here or there. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you were able to check your answers as you went through this. If you were able to check your answers, you can go ahead and give it a score on your own, kind of see how you did. You can also kind of see comparison of kind of what you thought versus what I thought processes, kind of compare those if you want. But overall, I would say, that was, so just kind of compare what you thought versus what I did, your answers versus the correct answers here. Just kind of see how many you got right. You can compare your pacing versus how I paced it, those kind of things. You will notice that at the end, when I saw that I kind of was running out of time a little bit, what I did is I kind of skipped a couple of chunks of text where I could. So you'll get more practice with kind of identifying where you can kind of skip chunks of text. Keep in mind you can't do that if it's on something where there's something where it's asking you to place a sentence. On those ones, you're not going to be able to skip any text. You have to read that full paragraph. But on other ones, if you're not asked to place a sentence or anything like that, you can kind of skip around a little bit if you need to. So if you're running out of time, you're going to want to make sure that you're skipping areas of text that aren't numbered, so areas where you don't have to place a sentence, because that's where you can kind of get away with it, because then it's generally just testing your knowledge of grammar and things like that. So you can kind of get away with it a little bit right there. But hopefully that was helpful. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I want to touch on today. I think that that's pretty much it. I would say that's pretty much it. So yeah, I did have to skip around a little bit in the text at the end because I was running out of time a little bit. So there was that, but keep in mind, just notice where I did that, right? You can kind of do that a little bit as long as it's not in somewhere where you have to place a sentence, or if you have to add it versus delete a sentence. If it's just kind of questions on grammar, you can skip a little bit down and just kind of find verb tense around there and stuff. So that's just one thing to know, and hopefully that was helpful. If it was, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. As always, there'll be a donation link in the description. When that donation link is up and running, any private SAT tutoring I'm doing will be linked in the description, and any private college admissions consulting I'm doing will be linked in the description. So as always, make sure to have a good day.